That only helps us solve the problem though for this fiscal year. It's the future fiscal year going forward. If we fill those positions, those salaries will be there all year. And so we have to be concerned about going forward, because I personally don't see the state budget getting much better for higher ed for several years. The outlook is right now that they revenue next year than this year. But it's not going to be enough to help out much. And we've got to rebuild state reserves. They've used up all the state's reserves. So just like the college had our situation a few years ago, we've had to start building our reserves, the state's going to have to do the same thing. The next thing we want to look at is temporary employees. And when we're looking at the temporary employees, and we need to analyze every one of those positions. Many of our temporary employees are on call when needed for reasons, and we don't use them all the time. So I'll pick on David over there. He's got a bunch of people on temporary on call for when he has contracts. If we got the revenue coming in, we're going to do the contracts, and we're going to bring those people in as temporary. We got temporary people in the fitness center. We can't operate without the minimum number of lifeguards, so we have to bring people in. So we're going to look and see, are there any temporary positions that we don't have to have? I don't know what the answer is to that at this point in time. And then we're going to look at our supplies and expense budget. So we're going to be looking at it starting next Wednesday. I'm having meetings along with financial services with all of the members of the executive team to look at every organizational or departmental budget under their management, to talk about their supplies and expense. Could we take any cuts in those areas that doesn't impact people? Some places cannot. They're so small, there's no way to take any money out. Some are already committed because we have contracts in place, so we can't take money out. So, you know, we can get to this $750,000 number, I think, without having to do too much, too drastic this year. I'm worried about future years, though, but we don't know what that's going to look like. If we could cut our supplies and expense budget across the board by 5%, we'd be there. But we can't do it across the board because there are things in there that are already committed that we have to have. So I'm committed to not touching salaries at all. So we're not going to do any salary cuts. The board doesn't want to do any salary cuts. We won't need to do any salary cuts. There's no way we can afford to raise tuition on students. We've already raised it twice in the last 2 years, and this past year we raised not only tuitions, but we raised fees considerably. And even if we did want to raise them, it wouldn't bring us the money in this year because we only have one semester left in this year. So many of the suggestions that have come our way, and we need to keep looking at those, would help us more in the long term. It's hard to bring in new revenue. It's easier to cut expenses, and some expenses are really hard to cut. Just want to remind you that about between 70 and 75% of our budget is salaries and benefits. So it's really hard to get budget cuts in without looking at salaries and benefits. And the easiest place to look at salaries and benefits is those positions that are currently vacant. So we will be analyzing all of those. We've been doing this for a while, but once again, I'm not going to say we have a hiring freeze, because there are some positions, if people leave, we have to fill them. We just cannot get away with it. But we will analyze every one to figure out if we have an opening, do we have to fill it? Do we have to fill it now? Can we wait a few months? Can we wait till July 1st? Or can we just say we're not going to fill it until whenever we have funding available again? That's going to be the easiest thing for us to look at. But there's not going to be a hiring freeze. The one thing that is going to happen, though, is I'm going to put on hold any reclassifications. Just can't do reclassifications right now. Haven't worked out the details of this with HR yet. We may still let the cycle start so people can put in the paperwork and be in the queue for when funding might become available. But we just can't afford to do reclassifications at this point in time, because if we did one, we'd have to do all of them. So we just can't do it. Now that doesn't mean that if somebody takes on additional responsibilities because we have a vacant position, it doesn't mean we won't do supplemental pay. Okay, so if we have somebody leave and we decide that we're not going to replace them and we're going to put a burden on somebody else who is willing to take on extra duties, they may get supplemental pay. That's not a reclassification. A reclassification is looking at a current position, reanalyzing, and seeing if it needs to come up. We never go down and see if it needs to come up. So I'm not as worried about being able to meet the cuts that we're anticipating this year, but I am worried about the long-term future of state funding. Luckily, state funding is only 30% of our revenue. There are some schools that get 80 to 90% of their revenue. And so, they're going to have a harder time making changes to deal with those cuts that will be there. So if you have ideas of places that we could save money, you don't have to share them with me today, but you could email me, open to any ideas that you might have. If you have ideas for ways to bring in additional revenues, because it's not always going to be on the cut side of expenditures, we need to see if we can bring in some more revenues too. But the picture isn't really good from the state standpoint. The good news is Santa Fe Community College is in better position to absorb the cuts than most institutions in the state. And that's thanks to our local voters. We've got a stable tax base. We've got a stable mill levy that was approved a number of years ago, and we can count on that money. And over this past year, we actually had an increase in the valuation of property values in New Mexico. So one of the ways we actually may be able to offset some of the expenditures is our revenues from the taxes that came in for June were higher than expected. We need to keep building our reserves though, because just to remind everybody, we got that cash flow problem of being able to pay our expenses, including payroll in November and December, because we get 2/3 of our local mill levy in December and January, and it's the end of December, and the other third in June. So we got to have enough cash at the end of June to carry us through December. Doing a much better job of that. We learned how to manage cash flow a little bit better when we didn't even have to worry about it years ago. But that is still an issue. So we may be able to take advantage of some of those revenues coming in higher than expected. And we've identified some expenditure, some accounting, I don't want to say tricks, but anyway, accounting moves that are legal that actually may be able to allow us to offset some expenses without having to make cuts. So I think we are on track to be able to identify areas to get to that $500,000 to $750,000 that will move into contingency. We started this process. Now that they have called the legislature back into session starting tomorrow, we may know in the next week what those cuts are. Those things they come to some kind of agreement, which is a big assumption. But at some point in time, they're going to cut us. I'd rather know what it is now than know in April and only have 3 months to deal with it. But we're going to put the money into contingency right now. Anticipate that we're going to get the cut sometime during this year. So rather than move on to my next topic right now, let me see if there's any questions on the state funding issue and how we're going to deal with that. Okay, I think what we did, what we went through 2 years ago helped us to prepare for this. And I think we're in pretty good shape in this area. So we'll keep everybody informed of what we do moving forward. And I'm hoping that we will be able to present something to our board in October. We don't really have to go through at this point in time and do a formal budget adjustment until we actually know what the state's is going to be that final number. But we're going to go ahead and move the contingency amounts into a place where they can't be spent, that they're in the right categories at this point in time. Jan?
You said no salary cuts. Is that no salary cuts, period?
No salary
No
cuts.
furloughs?
No furloughs at this time. I mean, we don't know what's going to happen to the state. If it gets worse, I can't promise all those. I don't think we would do salary cuts in any direction, and I doubt that we would do furloughs. That is an option. But there is no plans, and actually no discussion for either one of those. Right?
How you should reconcile this
know that you can totally reconcile it. I did make a statement that got in print today that we're cutting off our nose to spite our face. At this higher ed summit last Friday, they did announce, and I agree with it, that we do have a goal of getting to, it's the route to 66. That's the catchy phrase. We're trying to get by 2030, which is still a long ways out there, we're trying to have 66% of working age adults, that's adults aged 25 to 64, having some level of college attainment in their certificate, associate's degree, bachelor's, master's, PhD. Right now the state's at about 44%. We need that for economic development purposes. Because we're never going to grow economically and have growing salaries if we don't have more people who are prepared to hire local jobs. It is pretty hard to reconcile the cuts with that. I think the challenge right now is that both the executive and the legislative areas think that we can raise revenue. Well, the only way we can raise revenue is to raise tuition at this point in time. And the more we raise tuition, the fewer students we're going to have, which means we're going to have less people getting those college level attainments, or even people coming back who are close to getting one. So it doesn't totally jive, but that's the world we currently live in. Other questions or comments? Yeah.
Can you speak to potential cuts to numbers of course offerings?
I think we do need to look at the schedule. I think, and I've already asked Vice President Peters, and she's talked with her deans about this already. For sure, we have to offer the courses that are required for degrees. We have got to schedule courses that students need to progress and complete their programs. I want us to look at, though, how many extra courses we offer that maybe aren't required, and I want to look at the multiple section courses. I would rather have to add courses because they're full than have to either cancel courses or run courses because we have 10, 10, and 10 when we could have had 2 15s. Saves us some money. So we do need to do a better job of hopefully planning the schedule ahead of time. I would rather add classes because we have students who need the courses and cancel classes. So we do need to look at that. And so that is something we're looking at. I think this fall we canceled about 100 classes. If we'd done scheduling a little bit more efficiently, we probably wouldn't have had to cancel that many. It's a real challenge for us and for the students to move them around. When we cancel class, they've got to find another class to take. If they're trying to finish their degree program, we always have to figure out something to do for them. So we are going to have to think about what are those classes. We definitely have to offer the classes that are required courses, whether they're gen ed courses or in a degree course. We've got to offer them in the sequence. And of course, those courses like math and science and English, they're offered every semester. Maybe we don't need to schedule quite as many of them until we are sure that they're all going to fill up. We projected having a 6% enrollment decline this year. We're running at a 3 to 4% range this fall. So we're actually doing better than we budgeted for, but we're still seeing declines in enrollment. And that's happening pretty much statewide. So, yeah. All right.
Are there plans for different tenants at the HEC that could be revenue producers for us?
We're always open to that, with everybody getting their cuts. It's going to be hard.
We do have some prospects that we even heard of today, so, that you don't even know about yet.
Ah, good. That's good to hear. Some of our partners are having to cut back or think about pulling out because they're getting cuts too, and some of them are getting a lot bigger cuts than we are. So it's just a tough time right now.
Yeah. Has it been looked at? Would it make any difference in our revenues to change payment deadlines? Because I think we come up with a lot of students who register, and then 3 months later they forgot they registered, and so we lose enrollment and things like that. If we push payment deadlines up a little bit, so students have to commit with their wallets before too long, do you think that would make a difference in our income?
I don't know if that would make a difference in the long run. It's always worth looking at. A lot of people register and don't pay, or they register and then they get disenrolled, and they get re-enrolled, and they get disenrolled. I don't want to be doing things that force lower enrollment and lower our revenues. But, always we need to be looking at those deadlines and those schedules, because it could keep some people from enrolling who would pay and will stay in the class, and some people are just holding a seat. So those are always things that we need to look at. But, the problem is the amount of dollars we're talking about. Doing some of these small things might help in the long term, but they don't solve the magnitude of the problem that we need now. So, but we need those ideas. We need to be looking at those. To me, that addresses in some ways some of our cash flow issues, maybe even a little bit more than it does our actual revenue issues. Other questions on funding the state budgets? Good news is we've got stable local dollars. Our enrollments aren't down as much as we thought they would be. We're less dependent on the state than most institutions in New Mexico. So we're going to be able to get through whatever happens this year without really having to do anything drastic like we had to do a few years ago. Okay, we'll talk a little bit about something that I'm learning more about every day, and that's the Fair Labor Standards Act. And the federal government is making changes in the regulations that increases the income level at which a person can be exempt from overtime. Right now, it's in the $23,000 range, and it's going to $47,000 for most positions. Faculty, by federal ruling, are exempt from the overtime rules. So, effective December 1st, anybody who's making up to $47,470 per year, or converted to a weekly amount, will be eligible for overtime pay. Now, the rulings and the feedback, the court cases are moving every day. Okay, so we don't know what some of the final outcomes are going to be, the things that we have to go along with. One of the things that we do know now is people who are currently salaried will be below that $47,000 threshold are now going to become non-exempt, which means they're eligible for overtime. Okay? So if you want to look at it on the positive side, that means people who have been working more than 40 hours a week could get paid more. If you want to look at it on the negative side, there's two negatives. One is some people feel like that they're being demoted because now they're becoming an hourly worker. But there's also the cost of the college when we don't have any money. So we need to do a little bit of both. We now know that we can leave those people who were salaried as salaried employees, but they're going to become salaried non-exempt employees, which means they're eligible for overtime. But that also means, so we're not going to have to change the dates of the payroll. So for the 40 people who are impacted by this, you're still going to get your salaried payroll on the same schedule as before. We don't have to switch you to the hourly payroll. But we do have to track hours to know if you work overtime. And we do, if we get audited, we have to have records that show that. So most likely, and this is not 100% sure yet, most likely you're going to have to keep some kind of timesheet, whether it's online or paper. It doesn't mean we have to do time clocks. We don't have to bunch people in and out. But we have to have some way to prove that people worked or didn't work overtime, because we get audited, and if we have no proof, we get in trouble all the time. What's going to happen, though, is for those of you who are impacted for this, and we'll go over this a little bit more in some of the sessions next week, and I know some other questions will come up. If you do work overtime, number one, you need to be approved ahead of time. You'll get paid those overtime hours in the next paycheck. And that's because when we run payroll on a Tuesday or a Wednesday, whatever we run it, it's evening or somewhere. Wednesday. We pay you, if you're salaried, you get paid through the last day you actually worked. So when you get a paycheck on Friday, you're getting paid through Friday. There's no way for us to know if you hit the overtime requirements yet. So we'll pay you your regular salary, and then if you earn overtime, that'll come in the next paycheck, which will be 2 weeks later. It won't happen at the same time. People who are hourly right now, their paychecks are staggered, so they actually get paid a week after their pay period ended. correct? So there's some issues there to work out on that. We have chosen to basically use that earnings standard as our guideline for this. And so anybody who makes less than that 47,470 number will be eligible for overtime. There are still some issues related to people who have multiple jobs. So if your primary job is a salaried position and you do something additional, you probably don't get overtime. But one of the question marks that's still out there to be discovered is what happens if somebody is hourly and then they teach as an adjunct instructor in the evenings or on the weekends? Is that going to throw them into overtime or not? That question is not 100% clear at this time. And so we're still going to have to wait and see. And besides all this, the law is set, or the rule is set to go into effect on December 1st. 25 states, including New Mexico, have filed suit to stop it. It might not happen. Don't know. But we have to plan for it happening because it does have an impact. So I know there's been questions about that, about the salary versus the hourly. We have areas where people have been salaried in the past and now they're going to be eligible for overtime. Our number one criteria as to whether or not we're going to pay overtime is going to be are we meeting our students' needs? Okay? If we have to pay overtime because we have events in the evening or on the weekend that's going to throw people into overtime, we'll pay overtime. But we need to try to minimize that because we don't have the dollars for it. And so managers are going to have to look at flex scheduling or rotating schedules. We have to do those things ahead of time to try to prevent us where we can from going into that overtime pay because we can't afford it. But we're also not going to put the burden on the backs of the people who are exempt. Okay? So we're just going to have to work with that if this all goes into effect. How to deal with it. It can be managed. It's going to be a little different for some of us. It's definitely going to be different for the 40 people who fall in that category. And it could be different for those people who do extra jobs like teaching as adjuncts. Because we don't know what the final ruling is going to be on that one at this time. So there's going to be a session next week. One day it's for supervisors, and another day is going to be for the 40 employees that we know now who are impacted. And we split those up at a request that made sense to me because supervisors may come up with some questions that we need to go out and try to find some answers to so we can share that with the 40 employees that we know are impacted at the present time. Questions?
I don't know how many of those 40 are in this situation, but what if you're a supervisor and you're one of those? I've been in a both positions.
Yes.
And I teach extras, so.
That's entirely possible.
No, I do. I mean,
But there may be other people like yourself that are supervisors who also are amongst that 40.
and teach
And we
and
teach.
do all the others.
It's that extra, we know what we have to do for your regular job, which means you can stay salaried if you're salaried, but you're going to have to track time so we can pay overtime when needed. What we don't know the full details yet is what happens with those extra jobs that you do that may throw you into overtime even if you are on the regular job.
As someone who is non-exempt salaried with the city for 15 years, can I make a suggestion? They utilize comp time too.
We can,
So you can do comp time to where you can bank up to almost 120 hours and then use that and not affect your annual vacation.
that is something we are looking into. We've never had a way to formally track comp time at this point in time.
Because
The easiest thing is if you do comp time is do it during the same pay period, during the same week. Or the next week, but we're looking at that as well.
Because some of us have jobs that, by state mandate, we have to be here in 2 hours if there's a problem. I mean, my job requires me to hit the pool if there's an emergency within 2 hours.
Right.
Anytime.
And if you did, that threw you into overtime, you would be paid overtime. I mean, there are some places where we're just going to have to pay overtime because we have to do it. And so, once again, I want to remind you, don't shoot the messenger. This is the federal government telling us what we have to do. We're trying to figure out how we will be implementing and doing it. So, and I promise you, even if it goes into effect on December 1st, There will be some court ruling that changes it on December 10th. So we're gonna have to adjust to some new way of having to track it. So we're trying to get ahead of it as best we can. It's a moving target, so it's hard to do. Okay. Other questions, comments on this? I just want to reiterate, we're only doing this because the federal government says we have to do it. For those of you who are working more than 40 hours a week, although the college can't really afford to pay much overtime right now, it is an opportunity for you to make more money. So you need to look at it that way. But overtime does have to be approved beforehand unless it's an emergency. If there are some emergencies that come up and people do have to come in, we will work on that. Yep.
Randy, in the last fellowship that I worked for, we actually had a tracking system for clocking in when we signed into our computers.
We have web time.
Yeah.
Not everybody is on it yet. We're still trying to roll it out, but that is something that we are going to do. So instead of a punch clock, you actually you actually report your hours. You don't actually sign in with web time, but that is where we are doing that at this point.
And it was just based on if you signed in, you signed out for lunch, and you signed back in for lunch, and it just tracked everything.
Yeah, our plan right now is not to go that route unless we have to. But a lot of places instead of punch clocks do that anymore. But right now we're going to try to eventually get everybody who tracks hours to track it using web time rather than the paper forms. But we're still going to have
That's difficult if not everyone has a computer.
Yeah, not everybody.
There's certain sections where 10 people share a computer. Makes it difficult.
So when I went into the site and I read the act, I noticed that one of the suggestions the federal government made was to, if people were at the threshold, to increase their pay.
We're going to get the money.
Well, no, I don't know, but if they were at the threshold, they're saying, to increase their pay.
We have decided that rather than do anything, because if we increased one, we should increase everybody. We're just going to stick with everybody's salary where they are. If they earn overtime, they'll make overtime. If you get, I know this is one of the questions I got from, I think, staff senate. If we give any kind of cost of living or other adjustments and it pushes you over the threshold, when you're over the threshold, you're exempt. Now, the threshold is going to move every few years the way they've introduced it. So there will be more and more people who move into this category as time goes by. We're just going to try to treat everybody different.
I had a couple questions about comp time in lieu of overtime. Some of the things I've read say that the comp time also has to be calculated at time and a half, like overtime pay would. And then one of the things I've heard, and I don't know, it's more anecdotal, is that employees have the option to select whether they want to do comp time or receive overtime.
Anybody want to say anything about that? I don't know as much about that part of the act.
So currently, we're in the process of revising our overtime policy, and what's proposed is that you would be able to know ahead of time. So if your supervisor comes to you and says, can you work this evening event for 4 hours, you need to negotiate back and forth. So if you want it as overtime, we'll pay it as overtime. But if you want it as comp time, we can do that as well.
This is one of the questions, especially in terms of the tracking and the time and a half versus the time is we still got to look at.
Why is this happening? Why is this happening?
Because the federal government says so. Well, they're trying to make sure that people who are working extra hours are getting paid for extra hours. And right now they feel like the threshold for where that exempt versus non-exempt number should be is the 47,000 something number versus the 23,000 number. It's really to benefit workers in the long term. So it's a way for people to get paid for what they're doing because they're not getting salary increases basically. And I understand that.
Well, it's partly because they have not updated these rules in 30 years. So the threshold still 30 years ago. So, you know, people making $20,000 last 30 years ago are now making $47,000.
It really is the inflation. There was a hand over here. Other questions, comments on that? Yep.
You're basically saying that the people that are affected by it are going to be, nobody's going to be put back to the hourly
They're going to report hours worked so that we can track the overtime, but they are going to stay salaried. So if you're currently salaried, you will still be salaried. You're just going to be salaried non-exempt, which means we have to track the hours you work each week so we know when you cross that 40-hour threshold. But you are not going to go on the hourly payroll, and you're not going to have to change to that payroll period. So if you're currently salaried and you fall into this, you're still going to be salaried. You are probably going to have to turn in some type of timesheet. Otherwise, we have no proof. And we're working on the update of the policies. But overtime, except in the case of emergencies, does need pre-approval.
One thing that's good about being switched over to non-exempt is if you are terminated, you have a lot more rights as a non-exempt employee than an exempt employee. If you're exempt, I know in the city of Santa Fe, exempt, you can be fired without cause. Whereas if you're non-exempt, you have to go through a whole. So there's a lot more.
That's not true here. So.
Oh, well, look, FLSA gives you more protections for exempt and non-exempt as far as.
In terms of workers'
rights. Yeah.
Other questions, Charlie?
I know there were some questions as to whether or not this was going to have any impact on the current staff.
Currently, the set back hour schedule is staying the same, so it will have no impact upon that. The one change that will take place is right now when we post jobs, we can post them as exempt or non-exempt. And we'll probably take that off because it's going to depend on what the person's final salary is. Because we do have some salary grades that span below and above the threshold. So we'll probably take that out, and then when the job offer is made, they will know whether they're being offered a job as an exempt employee or non-exempt, and that'll be based upon the salary that they're offering. That is one change that we will have to do, so thanks for that question. Any other questions? There's always something new and something extra to go on. Yeah,
Randy, can I ask a question that doesn't have to deal with this?
yeah, that's where we're going next.
Okay, I understand from Ellen that the New Mexico Public Insurance Authority is changing their contribution so that our deductibles are going up on the insurance.
I don't know that. We know that we had an increase effective October 1st of how much? That's premium increase.
Yeah, the deductibles went up substantially.
I don't know the answer to that.
The deductibles will be going up on January 1st of 2017, so if you have your guide or if you have not picked it up, there was an announcement, so if you get your guide, you can see the changes there on the
Yeah, they're pretty substantial.
So be sure to pick those up. Once again, that's something we have no control over. The insurance authority gets to do that. We will be discussing when we want to go out for an RFP to look at changing insurance companies in the near future. That's always a big deal to do because then everybody has to change. Even if you have the same doctor, you have to still fill out all your forms. But that is something we're looking at. So once again, that is not something we can control. But you need to. And of course, it always depends also on what package you're under as to how much you're impacted or not impacted. All right, I'll open the floor to other questions. We need to wrap up at 3:30 because there is another scheduled event in here in this room at 3:30 that we're hoping many of you will stay for. That features how I think a couple of different department areas have been doing advising and working with students to get retention and graduation rates up. So open the floor to questions. Questions and comments?
Can you address the announcement that the community made about the hiring of commission? Can you speak out, please?
I'll repeat it.
Related to Highlands.
Okay, the question is about the Higher Learning's Commission's announcement about putting Highlands on probation. Once again, if you didn't read the story, they are on probation. That means they are still accredited. They have to address some criteria areas that they were found to be either lacking in or default in, and I think most of those have to be addressed by a year from now. I think we're learning some things from what they're being cited for to prepare us so that we don't run into those same issues in a few years. Some of them are related to their finances and their lack of reserves. I think we're in much better shape than we were 2 years ago. Some of their findings relate to the fact that they have outreach centers and don't have all the services available to their students. We're already on top of that. So as we're expanding offerings to the high schools or even to Raton, we have got to make sure that any students in those communities have access to the same services as the students here do. So the testing center is already working with Raton to try to figure out how we can have a person up there so they can do placement tests up there. We need to figure out how we can get counseling and advising services up there. It can be done via Skype. It doesn't have to be face-to-face. And we got to make sure we have something in place to address those issues. Right now, it does not affect their credits. It does not affect any of their students. But if they lose their accreditation, then their students would not be able to transfer those credits to another institution. And I know they will be doing everything they can to either extend the probation because they can't resolve everything in the period of time they're given. I believe they have, if I remember correctly, they have 2 years. Jill here? They have 2 years?
I was going to say, they do their next portfolio submission in November of 2017, and then it'll go out for review and various things, and a final decision will come back this spring or summer of 2018. And I guess the only thing I'll add is, since they're our primary partner at the HEC, they've been including us. We knew this was coming, basically, or they suspected it was coming based on the feedback they received since the summer. So we've already been invited. Key people, including Yash and the Vice President Margaret Peters, and the deans are getting invited to be part of their strategic planning process. They've been doing it pretty gay. I'll just tell you, it is a buzz over there. They are very clear about what the issues are, and they're beginning to look at plans to meet them.
Some of the areas that we have as KPIs in our strategic plan, and for those of you who were there or watched last night's board meeting, that are my goals actually relate to the things that the Higher Learning Commission is looking at. Assessment of student learning outcomes, retention rates, success rates, all those things we've been talking about in terms of student success. You have to have something in place, or you can demonstrate that you are doing things to address those issues. It doesn't mean you have to have them all solved, but that is things that the Higher Learning Commission is looking at. And, accreditation is critical. If we aren't accredited, we aren't here. So we're learning from what's happened to Highlands because we come up to our next big accreditation thing in 2019, am I correct? 2019. Yep.
Randy, what's going on with Luna? I understand they were taken over.
That's news to me.
We haven't heard that.
Yeah.
I was just with their president yesterday. He didn't say a word about it. There's all kind of rumors going around. There is talk about consolidating colleges and universities and how can we save money. So there's all kind of rumors and all kind of discussions going on. I have not heard anything. Just to remind everybody when those rumors go around, the universities are all constitutionally created. The legislature cannot do anything to the universities without the voters and approval. They can cut their funding, but they can't consolidate them, close them down. They all take a constitutional amendment. The community colleges, including the branch campuses, however, are statutorily created. So they do have a little bit more control over us. And so we're working together with the New Mexico Independent Community Colleges, which we're a member of, is working, and we're coming up with some proposals to try to get ahead of some of the consolidation movements. Whether we can do that, I don't know. You're going to hear all kind of rumors, and they're just rumors. People are talking about ways to save money, lower overhead costs. We've got too many colleges. No, we don't have enough colleges. One of our big concerns as community colleges is the access issue. I keep saying, I said this the other day, and I actually got one of the legislators to agree with me who wasn't from here. A Santa Fe student is not going to pick up and move to Roswell or Hobbs to take it over. Our students are placed down financially, family ties, cultural. Some students will move to Albuquerque or Las Cruces to go to New Mexico State or go to UNM and try to come back, but many of them can't afford it. The types of students that we serve can't afford it. So you can't say that there's too much duplication in programs. I keep trying to get them to throw in the word, we need to avoid unnecessary duplication of programs. We wouldn't have a welding program if our local voters hadn't helped give us the money and our local employers give us money. Because the state would have said, well, they should drive to Albuquerque. We have full programs. They have full programs. Why should our students have to drive to Albuquerque to take a welding program? Now, there are some programs that are so expensive you can't replicate them everywhere. The main one I can think of right now is the wind training program that's at Mesa Lands. Not everybody's going to pick up and move to Mesa Lands to Tucumcari, even though it's cheap to take a program. But if you're really interested in that, you might do it. But many colleges are working with Mesa Lands so that they're offering bulk of the courses, for example, at CNN, and you only have to go to Mesa Lands for the 3 to 6 weeks of final training because you got to climb that big tower and you got to get up in the end and learn things. So, you know, there are some things that we can do regionally. There are some things we can do through course sharing, through Sign Online, to save some costs around the state. My personal opinion is access is still key for our students, and having a college that they can go to that's within reasonable commuting distance is important for access. Tuition is also important for access.
I had a maybe suggestion and a comment about, I've been getting a little bit of flack about this training on the 21st, on October 21st, you know, the campus-wide thing. And from a morale, and it just confuses my staff because we stay open, so I have to backfill those positions, and then we lose money on the gym as far as non-revenue. So it seems like if we're trying to save money, but we're doing these special events, it kind of contradicts each other in a way, especially with fitness, where we take this training yearly for the active shooter stuff. So that's just a suggestion. I'm just putting it out there.
So we are doing some things where we get everybody together, and we want to do it twice a year. We weren't able to get it in the schedule in time for this fall to close everything. In the spring, there will be no classes, and there will be no services on the day that is set aside for that training. I don't know what that is. So the fitness center will be closed. We will have no students. That is not true this semester. So this semester, there will be no campus services available, except for those that we absolutely have to. Classes are not canceled on the 21st. So because of the way the world is, we have got to ensure that we are all as prepared as we can be in case an event happens on this campus. So we are inviting our partners from the HEC, from the master's program, and here today to participate in that training. Because for God's sake, if something happens, let's try to be as prepared as we can be. So we will be having that training on the 21st. What's his name? Jesus. Some of you saw him. He was here about 8 years ago. He's got an updated training. It is an all-day training. We are going to provide a little breakfast and a little lunch. It will be in the fitness center. But it is something that we really do need everybody to attend. We're trying to get as many adjunct faculty to attend as possible. We're still working on how we might be able to reimburse them a little bit for that, since they're not full-time employees. But it's just something that we really need to do.
Yes, I'm curious what the impact has been to SFCC from the recent ITT closure.
Okay, so the question is about the impact of the ITT closures. You know, the private colleges, for-profit colleges around the country are all in trouble because they've been overcharging students and underperforming in some ways. We have worked closely with the faculty and students from ITT, especially in the nursing program, and we have created, anybody here tell me, 2 sections of nursing? So we're taking, they were on a quarter system, so those students were here in the 7th and 8th quarter. We're helping them to finish. The ones who were earlier, they're going to have to pretty much start over. But we were able to resurrect our old curriculum because we converted to this new BSN Track Advanced curriculum. We'd already archived it last year, so we've resurrected that curriculum. We've actually been able to hire some of their faculty to be adjunct faculty for us. So we're helping those students, and right now I think it's about 28 students. It's increasing enrollments for us. There's the potential of having that grow to 50 or more. And then we're also looking at computer science and engineering as a possibility. I believe that's the two areas there. So where we can, we need to help those students out. They all put down lots of money up front, and they're not getting a refund. And so we're going to try to help them finish. They've got to meet our standards. They've got to complete the program and prove that they've got all the competencies that they need. But it is an opportunity for us. And we've actually received some pretty good kudos from the Attorney General's office and the Higher Education Department, because we kind of stepped to the plate right away with the nursing program. I was told, Jenny or Susan aren't here, are they? I was told there was a meeting at the Board of Nursing this week. I think it was going to happen yesterday, if I Wednesday, where they were going to be talking, and a lot of the ITT students are coming. Our students that we picked up from ITT are doing the clinicals where ITT had their clinicals. We got those slots. They were going to the hearing yesterday in their new SFCC. That was positive. Other questions?
There's going to be some kind of fundraising effort for Gerald Clay at the Fitness Center. Do you have an update?
I don't have any updates. Does anybody have any updates on the fundraiser for Gerald?
We moved it to March Madness.
Okay, so in March. Okay, so the fundraiser for Gerald Clay is going to be in the spring now, March.